Yo, what's up, y'all? Now I'm making more videos than usual. I'm tripping, you know what I mean? But this is something that I just have to address, sports related. As you know, I deal with a whole number of different subjects, usually centered around sports. But I'm the type of guy, man. I talk religion sometimes. I even talk fantasy television shows. Like I love The Witcher, all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? Like I try to keep it interesting. Something I'm into, I just bring it. But this here is about the not the NBA Finals and LeBron James and his some of his over the top fans. You know what I mean? First off, I like to say I do consider myself a fan of LeBron James, right? And a fan of the way LeBron James plays, you know, in particular, right? So I'm watching LeBron James and I understand what I'm looking at. It's like I'm a basketball like fan. Like I'm really into like cerebral players and players that know how to control the game and all of that type of stuff. And it's always been clear to me that the best player playing basketball right now in this current era, especially consistently on offense, is LeBron James. Like I believe he's been the best player since midway through Kobe and Tim Duncan's reign. Like in the beginning of LeBron James' career, like some of these guys go overboard. They act like LeBron James was the best player in the league from his second year, third year, fourth year. That's a bunch of nonsense. Like that's practically impossible because typically what you have with rookies, second year, third year, fourth year players is the raw athlete, right? And that's what more so LeBron James was. Of course, he always was cerebral and he attempted to be cerebral, but he still didn't know the game like he needed to know it, like anywhere near where he is now. So, I say he was the best player in the league somewhere. I mean, it was definitely by the time he got to Miami, maybe the year before when he was like in Cleveland, somewhere around that time, right? Since then, he's been the face of the NBA, and without a doubt, the best player in the league. Okay, and this is the position I want to have because this is what I recognize. This is what I see, right? Another thing was this particular Lakers team this year. I love this Lakers team because this Lakers team represents and symbolizes everything that I love about basketball. I love the utilization of the big man, of size, of mid-range scoring. I'm into scoring the five ways that you can score on the basketball court, which is layups, in the post, okay, which can be kind of like the same thing. The mid-range jump shot, the three-pointers, and the free throw line, right? I love those teams that incorporate all of that, and it's precisely why the Golden State Warriors dominated for those years that they dominated. It's not because, those who don't really understand the game, they think it's just the three-point shots. That's the reason. No, the three-point shots is just one way Golden State scored. And with the exception of a few of those years where they were at the top, they weren't even the most prolific three-point shooting team in the league. That was the Houston Rockets, who made way more than them. However, Golden State was always better than Houston because they don't only shoot threes. They actually led the league really in layups made. That year when they had KD, those 2 years when they had KD, they were leading the league in layups made, and they had a better defensive rating. At any rate. You see, you LeBron people, though, who usually young guys who didn't watch a lot of 80s basketball, 90s basketball, they were just too small to really watch what was going on in those ages, in those times. LeBron James is the greatest thing they've ever seen. And in their mind, they can't imagine a player better than LeBron James. And they're getting to watch him in real time. So to them, LeBron James is just the greatest of all time. Is one thing, which forces me to just step in and argue why I say he's not. And this leads to me having to pull out his flaws because of the fact that when I say Jordan is better than LeBron, when I say Larry Bird is as good as LeBron, when I say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, in my opinion, is better than LeBron, and when I say those types of things, Magic Johnson was or equal to LeBron, they act like this is just some ridiculous stuff to say. It's just ridiculous shit to say, you know. And my thing is, and usually there I'm accused of, people like myself accused of recent biasness for that age, for the 80s and all of that kind of stuff. And no, it's based off of watching basketball then, watching basketball now, and making a real comparison, right? Most of these guys, like, they lose me with this stuff that players back then, like, there's a bunch of misnomers that's made. Like, players back then were less athletic. They wouldn't be able to deal with LeBron James, etc. Well, first of all, I don't believe that. And let me let you in on a little something, right? In the NBA, there's always been the supreme, elite athletic guys. Then there's the average athlete guys. Then there's the guys who we would consider very not athletic at all. Of course, they're athletic compared to the rest of society, but we mean NBA standard of athleticism. An example, Steph Curry would be considered not very athletic. JJ Redick would be considered not very athletic. Whereas LeBron James would be considered extremely athletic. Chris Carter in his heyday would be considered extremely athletic, elite athleticism. Okay? Now, elite athleticism was always the minority in the NBA. Always. You can go back to the late 70s, early 80s, when Julius Erving was arguably the most athletic player in the NBA. You had Julius Erving, but you also had Dominique Wilkins, who played in the early 80s. You had Larry Nance. These guys were extremely athletic players. Okay? But then you always had, and the athletic player oftentimes is considered the best player in the league, right? But even in that time, say in the 80s, you also had players like Bernard King, who would be considered not very athletic, but he could still light you up for 30 points a night. On a real crazy night, he could score 50, 60, right? So the supreme athleticism, while it helps, and while sometimes it leads to having the best player, it doesn't always do that. Like Harold Miner who was considered Baby Jordan's a very athletic player, and others like that, very athletic. But what I'm saying is those LeBron Jameses, the Julius Ervings, the Michael Jordans, the Dominique Wilkins, these guys were the extreme athletes, whereas the majority of the NBA isn't. And I would say that even till today. Like, you hear guys like Colin Cowherd and others, they're just saying, everybody's more athletic now. Everybody's doing what Dr. J is doing. That's a bunch of bullshit. No, Dr. J would still be a top 5 athlete if he played now. Everybody's not jumping from the foul line. Everybody's not, with crazy hang time. No, that's just a bunch of nonsense. And actually, many of the great players in the NBA right now are not supreme athletes. James Harden, not a supreme athlete. Steph Curry, as we said, not a supreme athlete. Klay Thompson, not a supreme athlete. Luka Doncic is not a supreme athlete. I mean, his athleticism is okay, but it's not supreme athleticism. He dropping damn near 30 a night. Trae Young, not very athletic. Almost average put up 30 a night in this NBA, right? So this idea that, these guys are just more athletic now. Larry Bird couldn't play. You mean Larry Bird couldn't put up 27, 28 in a league where Trae Young is averaging 30, he's cooking people for 30, where Steph Curry's cooking people for 30? You mean Larry Bird wouldn't be able to do that? Like, let's be for real. It's just ridiculous, right? Dennis Rodman was an extremely athletic guy, one of the most athletic players to ever play in the NBA. Okay? Now, what starts to happen is these guys disrespect that whole era. They act like, hey, LeBron James he done leapfrog Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He done leapfrog Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. I don't give a damn. Them guys got more rings than him. They find some type of excuse. First argument is, well, the rings is a team achievement, whereas let's just only look at stats, scoring titles, and rebounds and assists as being, the standard. Well, if that's the case, then explain to me why LeBron James. We'll put it this way: the argument against that, what makes it fall flat, is the fact that LeBron James went 2-2 when he was in Miami. Right? Now, that argument can hold up in his early days in Cleveland. I don't look at his early days in Cleveland. His early days in Cleveland are akin to Michael Jordan's early days in Chicago, where, he did his thing. But when he run into a team that was more experienced, a team that was more seasoned, that had better overall talent, like the Celtics of '86, he's going to lose to that team. Same way when LeBron James went up against the San Antonio Spurs, who were just as seasoned as those Celtics, he would lose. And that's understandable, okay? However, once he went to the Miami Heat, LeBron James had the best team in the NBA. And even if you want to say 2011, you want to give them an excuse that they were a new team, Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade were new coming together. Okay, that's fine. The second one they won against the Thunder. The Thunder were the team that was upstart, who weren't as seasoned as Miami. Okay, but that counts. LeBron's that's his first title. All right, the second one, he barely won that damn thing. But he won. Okay, we know it was a Ray Allen 3, but okay, they won. He got it. Can't take it back. Fine. When the Spurs came back that fourth year, Miami, they just obliterated them. LeBron James was swept. Do you understand why anyone who understood Michael Jordan immediately disqualifies LeBron on the basis of that? Like, you make these arguments. Well, LeBron James had Scottie Pippen. He had Tony Kukoc. He had Dennis Rodman. That's fine. But LeBron also had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Posey and all of these other guys that he had. And later Ray Allen, right? And he went 2-2 in Miami. Right there, honestly, the Jordan comparison is in trouble because you're dealing with someone who went 6-0 in the finals. All right, if that matters. Finals do matter. Like, the only time you're trying to say it doesn't is because it doesn't support your argument. All right, but the finals wins matter to everyone. Okay, ultimately, when you're comparing those guys. The other thing that I hate pointing out about LeBron James that makes him inferior to Michael Jordan is the fact that Michael Jordan was this player who was great. And actually, I argue he was more versatile than LeBron James. People act like LeBron James is more versatile because I don't think they understand what versatility is. Okay? Versatility isn't the ability to grab rebounds, the ability to score, and the ability to pass. That's not versatility. These are all basketball moves and basketball-like categories that a player should be good at. Now, everyone is not equally as good at them all, but that doesn't mean you're a versatile player. Versatile means I can put you in any system that is formulated by practically any coach and you fit in. LeBron James, the weakness with him for the most of his career is that he cannot fit into different systems. And the reason is LeBron James is a supremely gifted, one of the greatest of all time on the ball players. If LeBron James is controlling the ball and he's controlling the offense, he's really a point guard, and this is why many people who really look at it, they compare him to Magic Johnson and not so much to Michael Jordan, which is sound logic, right? So LeBron James is one of the greatest of all time at that. I won't say he's the greatest at it. I believe Magic Johnson is clearly the greatest at straight point guard work. His passing is better than LeBron's. LeBron can do other things better than Magic, though. I believe LeBron, of course, is a better scorer and he's a better defender than Magic Johnson ever could imagine being. So the argument that LeBron is better than Magic Johnson is understandable. But if you're talking about supreme generalship and leadership on the floor, mental toughness and all those different types of things, I give the nod to Magic Johnson. But LeBron James is not a great off-the-ball player, especially when you try to compare him to Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan, for the most part, didn't play controlling the game with the ball, but he has and could. In 1988, Phil Collins made Michael Jordan the point guard of the Bulls. And in that time, Michael Jordan, in an 11-game span, averaged a triple-double, a 30-point triple-double. So Michael Jordan, really, his numbers would have looked more like Russell Westbrook's, of course, much more efficient, had he played point guard. Because look, Jordan was averaging double-digit rebounds and double-digit assists during that span when he played point guard. So this just a small window of what the type of point guard he would have been. And this brings me to what I'm saying. When you build a team, right, I'm not impressed with the guy who is leading his team in rebounds, scoring, and assists. That doesn't impress me, because that does not indicate a good team. That indicates a bad team with one guy that's doing everything. And while that can show how effective that person can be, to me, basketball is not defined by that. It's defined by how great your team is based off of what you're bringing to make that team what it is. What I mean is what role you play, how perfectly you play your role. And Michael Jordan, for me, really embodied that. Why? Because he was an effective off-the-ball player, okay, which allowed the offense to be less predictable than it would be with a LeBron James team, right? Typically with a LeBron James team, what teams did early on, like Popovich did early on, was he realized LeBron James was not a great long-distance shooter, so he laid off of him, and he took away his passing lanes. And that was so effective that he could put J.J. Barea on him because he was ineffective from there. Took away his passing lanes, didn't allow him to drive, made him shoot, you see. Had LeBron been a more effective off-the-ball player, you could have run the offense through Dwayne Wade, and LeBron could be running around screens. He could be doing other things, putting themselves in positions to score. That whole strategy stifled him, and you've never seen that happen to Michael Jordan, ever, in that situation. And really, I hate pointing this out because really what I want to do is appreciate the greatness of LeBron James for what it is without these people coming in and have to immediately declare that he's the GOAT or better than Michael Jordan, and I know better. So that's pretty much what I'm going to say on that, man. There'll probably be a part 2 to this because I believe people will try to refute me. You won't win. So, man, with that, I'm out, y'all.